Welcome to Econ 102, where economist Noah Smith and I make sense of what's happening in the news, technology, business, and beyond through the lens of economics. Let's jump right in.
Women move toward Trump in this election. White men move toward Harris. So like all the narratives are just pretty broken. And you're going to have to appeal to people based on it's time for Democrats to embrace broad appeals. You've got to ditch this idea that a nation is just like a larger version of a city, and that you can have these local activist groups who represent various communities in the city come to you and basically offer you votes in exchange for patronage. That's not how national politics works. You've got to do broad appeals. It's too expensive to pay off everybody based on their demographic crosstabs. Actually, you know what? There's a really interesting theory about this called Selectorate Theory by a political scientist named Bruce Bueno de Mesquita, which, if my Spanish serves me right, means Bruce Goodness of Mesquite. But anyway, Bruce Bueno de Mesquita is one of the premier political scientists of our generation. And also, he's a really good forecaster who contracts to the CIA and forecasts political events really well. But also, he has the Selectorate Theory, which basically says that in any country, whether a dictatorship or a one-party state or, Soviet Union or like America or democracy, anywhere, has some group of people who selects the leader. The leader is not a Superman. He's not Homelander from The Boys. He doesn't rule through godlike power, right? He rules through a coalition. He has people who support him. And that's the selectorate, the group of people who have the potential, whose support matters. And in a military state, that's the military. And in a one-party state, it's the party, maybe, like the broad party, like Chinese Communist Party is 50 million people, I guess. And so that's the selectorate. And then the winning coalition is a group of the selectorate, which is big enough to win within the selectorate. And the question is, how do you buy a winning coalition? And selectorate theory says that in a dictatorship, you buy people directly. You give money to your cronies. If you have a small selectorate, if your selectorate is just the army, then you do what Iran and like Egypt and Myanmar and used to be Indonesia do, which is basically have the army be a mafia. And basically the army gets to run all the businesses. So you can buy off the army because no one else matters. You don't care about the people in the street. You just shoot them. You make your money from oil, I don't know, or the Suez Canal. And Indonesia had to stop this kind of politics, but I think Egypt and Iran still have this going strong. Pakistan to some degree has it going, where just the army rules shit and they're the mafia, and you can pay them off. But when you get to a democracy where the selectorate is the voting public, right, with 100 million people or whatever, when you get to that size of the selectorate, you can't just buy them off. It gets too expensive. And so selectorate theory predicts that democracies will be better because they will focus on providing public goods that benefit everyone, even the losers. So the idea is that the public goods will be like infrastructure, rule of law, or, et cetera, et cetera. And so democracies will provide public goods while everyone in an autocracy is focused on just paying off specific individual people and not necessarily providing public goods. This is one of those theories that was made in the 90s and early 2000s when everybody thought democracy is the best thing ever and we'll win an end of history kind of moment. But I think there's something to it. And I think Democrats have been trying to buy people off too specifically. They've been saying, okay, here's, this group, which this community, quote unquote, which is represented by this activist group that talks to our staffers, or more accurately, about 60 different activist groups, all funded by left-wing tech guys. And so then let's, here's this community, we'll buy them off by doing these different programs. So student loan cancellation was insanely expensive, regressive. Nobody really wanted it, but Biden did it because there were these groups who came and really fought for it hard in order to buy the young people community. And guess what? They shifted toward Trump. Anyways, but that was an attempt to buy off, but it was insanely expensive. So Democrats, they have this idea that you can buy off these, that communities one by one by getting a group, capital G group, to tell you what the community wants and then passing a giant budget item based on what the group tells you the community wants. And it's just not working. Because it's too expensive, the selectorate theory, but, student loan cancellation being the biggest thing, or various healthcare subsidies. There's all kinds of things that they did. And so then there's that, but then there's also the fact that most American voters don't vote based on, for president based on the direct benefit that they get, right? They vote based on self-expression. Because if you think about it, actually, that's almost all elections in the world are based on self-expression. Because if you think about it, why would you ever go out and vote for president when the presidency will never, ever be won by a single vote? It can't. If it got to a single vote, the Supreme Court would effectively decide it by deciding which votes are applicably counted. It'd be like Bush Gore, right? So the Supreme Court will not decide this. Will decide this. One vote will never, ever, ever make the difference in the presidency. So why does everyone go out and vote? Why do 100 million people go out and vote? They vote to express themselves. And if you express yourself, you're expressing principles and ideas. Those are like public goods in the Selectorate Theory. Those are broad things that appeal to everybody. Democrats need to stop thinking they can buy off specific groups of voters with like payola, essentially, and start doing broad appeals that help everybody in America.
What are examples of that?
So like, making it easier to build housing is an obvious one. Just competent management, which Democrats have not incredibly done lately, but which will be very attractive once RFK gets going, right? It's like, hey, under me, your kid will not get measles, right? Appeals to our commonality as Americans. That was what Bill Clinton always did. Bill Clinton would always say, like, what unites us is more important than what divides us. Americans are united on our values. That was every speech he gave. We're actually united. Did it persuade Republicans to support him? Hell no, it didn't. Did it persuade a few enough swing voters to support him where he consistently won elections? Hell yes, it did. Right? He just always said what unites is more important than what divides us. Just talk about basic universal values, freedom, and freedom from fear, like freedom from fear of crime and disorder is a fundamental human freedom. Talk about freedom in international context, like now you have all the right-wing pundits saying, why is Russia our enemy? Well, Russia threatens freedom. China threatens freedom even more. And so talk about freedom. Bring that back. And Kamala Harris did this at the very end of her campaign, but it was way too late and way too little, honestly. But it was just people had already associated her with wokeness, and she didn't. If she had been like, Ms. Freedom and like we're all Americans and like Bill Clinton too, from day one, from 2019, when that was really harshly unpopular, had she done that, she would have been a successful politician more than she was.
One last quick question. This is from Ryan Cobine. He asks, Noah, are you familiar with Neil Howe's book, The Fourth Turning is Here? What do you think of this generational driver hypothesis as an explanation of certain aspects of his history and society?
Well, I haven't read it, so I can hold forth on things I haven't read because I asked GPT to summarize them and read a million commentaries about them, but you're going to get a second-rate rant. But okay, why not? The idea is that there's generations that tear down institutions and generations that build institutions. And the boomers were the ultimate teardown generation, and that the millennials would be the generation that builds up institutions. Well, guess what? They did. They were very woke. The millennials built a new series of institutions of woke stuff to replace the old stuff. Where Nature magazine is wading into political controversies and like the NSF is awarding science grants based on race, et cetera, and things like that. And the new online media of like Teen Vogue saying everything is about capitalism. Those were the institutions that the millennials were building, right? The groups were an institution in American life that we didn't even have a name for until recently. And so that was an institution that millennials were building. Social media stuff. Now we're in the process of being like, hold on, maybe that sucked. So the thing is that I don't see Trump and his people building much in the way. Elon and Vivek want to go and just like fire 80% of the civil service or whatever. That's degrading institution. That's a teardown. And they're Generation X anyway, or at least Elon is. Like, that's tearing down institutions. Or, RFK saying, okay, we're going to just ban vaccines and then allow all this quack shit. Like, that's tearing down. That's not building up. And the people who wanted to build up were the wokesters, who sort of built up over the 2010s, built up things that, frankly, were a little dysfunctional. And so I think if you want to really take Strauss and Howe's theories seriously, you've got to look at this idea of the woke revolution as the builder effort. And unfortunately, I think that kind of face planted. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves me disbelieving in long dated generational cycle theories that are difficult to assess with data. But I don't know where it should leave you, maybe depressed.
Like many of you, I spend a good chunk of my day managing emails and phone calls. And despite being careful about where I share my contact info, somehow the robocalls keep multiplying and my inbox is flooded with spam. It turns out there's a reason for this. Data brokers. These companies don't just collect basic contact info. They're gathering everything from your social security number and financial records to your shopping habits and employment history. Some health insurance companies are now working with data brokers to track your online activity, which could actually affect your insurance rates. Another huge privacy risk are people search sites. These websites publish detailed profiles about you, including your home address, family members' information, and even sensitive details like religious beliefs or political affiliations. This got me thinking about how exposed we all are. Whether you're sending a wire transfer, want to protect against identity theft, or just trying to keep your family's personal details private. That's why I started using Incogni. Here's what makes it different. They automatically handle 5 different types of data brokers: marketing, recruitment, financial information, risk mitigation brokers, and those people search sites. Instead of you having to track down all these companies yourself, and trust me, there are hundreds, Incogni contacts them on your behalf and demands they remove your information. And here's the key. They keep monitoring and removing your data automatically because these brokers often try to collect it again. Incogni protects your data across all your devices, whether you're working from home, a coffee shop, or anywhere with public Wi-Fi. Plus, you can add up to 4 additional family members under their family and friends plan. And they're so confident you'll see the difference in your day-to-day, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code ECON102 at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. Incogni.com/econ102.
Econ 102 is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Moment of Zen, In the Arena, The Cognitive Revolution, and more. If you like what you hear, subscribe and leave us a review in the App Store. You can keep up with both of our Substacks for written analysis of the topics we cover in the show at noahopinion.substack.com and erictornberg.substack.com. Thanks for listening.